Okay, everybody. Hope you can see my screen. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. So I shall proceed on this basis. So as I said earlier, we have been around for quite some time now, some 70 years ago. But let me say that the initial years were very, very slow in taking off. All of it came about with the need to address a particular problem in our education and training landscape. And Mauritius being a country where we have people of varied origins, such as from different parts of Africa, of Europe, of India, China, and so on, we tend to have qualifications from which we have inherited from various places and different kinds, predominantly from England and France. So did the appellations of qualifications, which caused a great deal of confusion. Let me show you some of the qualifications that we had. And you have there certificates, diplomas, professional diplomas, higher diplomas, intermediate, and so on. So much so that we talked about, we were having what we call, or what was called at the time, a jungle of qualifications. And that's what it was really about, very confusing. Hence, this confusion around qualifications, and we felt that there was a need for us to look at the national qualification framework. And it is in this context that the idea of setting up an NQF was first mooted, and it led in 2003 with the advent of the Mauritius Qualifications Authority. Basically, the NQF is about classification of qualifications. That was the first bit about it. And this was according to set criteria for levels of learning achieved. Secondly, the idea was to improve understanding of education and training system and the progression routes and access to different parts of the system. And of course, international comparability across borders, because from Mauritius, people have tended to go abroad to go and study, or workers moving around for going for employment and so on. So with this in mind, the NQF was, shall I say, put together as a 10-level framework with certificate of primary education as an entry level, number 1, and going up to all the various qualifications up to level 10, the PhD doctorate. You will notice that we have kept the 3 strands side by side, if I may say: primary, secondary education, TVET workplace, and tertiary education or higher education. And of course, behind there's the set of level descriptors, each defined in terms of the progressive stages of achievement and outcomes and complexity of skills applicable. So eventually, the NQF was used for various functions. For example, if you look at the different functions there, first is the one regarding standard settings at different levels. Initially, it was more for the TVET area. Second, we have the NQF used for recognition and equivalence of qualifications, where for all recognition of qualification, there was a level assigned, say for equivalence. We use NQF for accreditation of programs. Also, when we did the registration of training institutions, there was NQF, and then also for recognition of prior learning. I just draw an aside here talking about registration of training institutions. We even used NQF in particular there for when we were what we call registering individually all the trainers within institutions, and we assigned a level up to which they can be allowed to teach. So it was more about registration of trainers given a level for them to be able to teach at that particular level. So what were the intended benefits of the NQF at that time when it was set out. Of course, like common everywhere, we find this parity of esteem between academic and vocational qualifications. I'm glad that it was not so much there before, and it is coming very slowly and almost in a natural manner, I would say, but it is happening in a good way. Second, it's about the pathways, education and training, how to pick very clear pathways. Third is about comparability of standards. This is under the NQF. It's about, especially with when you come to international benchmarking. Again, also regarding facilitating access, mobility, and progression within the systems. More about international recognition, especially for vocational qualifications, which is lesser known, awarded in Mauritius. Quality improvement and accountability in the system, and also to enhance the quality of learning and training. Which brings me to what is the governance behind the National Qualifications Framework, and what are the instances that look at the NQF or are responsible for the NQF. So at the very top, the NQF is under the Ministry of Education, but then managed to its operating arm, the Mauritius Qualifications Authority, which has a board at the top where there is a parity between the public and private sector in terms of partnership and equal representation at very high level. And that's under the Ministry of Education. And this is followed by industry committees, which are there for setting the standards primarily, and because it's very important that there's industry behind the exercise. And also when we look at the operational side, when we are registering providers to give these qualifications, or even the accreditation of all the training programs, there's the accreditation committee. And also when you look at the quality aspects, the quality audit panels, all of these have equal representation, both from the public and private sector. In particular, the last one in the audit, we have more of the education people and industry people together to effect the audit of the whatever is happening at all levels. So even from the development of qualifications to the provision of training and learning, up to the assessment, all there we have the quality audit panels. With regard to the NQF, what we are witnessing now is the change happening very, very slowly, and it's very interesting that I share this with you. There is a shift from what the NQF was there before on the periphery of things happening, but it's now moving into the mainstream of education and training. I don't know how to explain this in better detail, but I'll try to say that with the reforms that are being undertaken currently at primary, secondary level, or even higher education or in TVET sector, you find that the NQF is coming out in a very big way to be used as almost as the backbone of what is happening, but it is more and more present in the discourse, more and more present where people are constantly now at all levels of learning, continually referring to the qualifications framework, whereas before it was more or less the TVET area that was closer to the NQF, and that's where we initially started from. And with that, we have also seen more and more widespread adoption of the learning outcomes approach. Again, the TVET people were first to go towards that, and now we're increasingly seeing in higher education, this is already happening. Especially, we have started with the engineering profession, with the Washington Accord and all that. We are seeing now in all other learning at higher education, this is happening too. So this is one very good thing around the NQF. And also very important we've seen is this commonly agreed credit system, whereas there were subsystems, if I may say, before, more particularly started again in the TVET area. We are seeing it happening also now, get the conversation going around to have an agreed credit system. And this is a very interesting area of work that we are doing currently. So whereas the focus has been mainly on the TVET sector, where national qualifications have developed in a big way, this has happened within the TVET area for various sectors. Let me share with you, for example, a series of qualifications or national certificates in the tourism and hospitality area, which is what we started off initially. Remember, Mauritius is a tourist destination, not doing very well at the moment with COVID and all that, and not to mention the oil spill that we just had, very bad. We still have our borders closed, but we are using, in fact, the opportunity to do a lot of work around qualifications in this area, tourism and hospitality. And this is just one example of a series of qualification in this area. Number one, contributor to GDP, tourism and hospitality. The second one would be, for example, in the ICT area, a series of qualifications they are developed. ICT is also a big industry in Mauritius now. These qualifications, you'd easily obtain them from our registers, which we have developed. And the registers will give out full information, what are these qualifications about, the learning outcomes, the performance criteria and range statement, and so on, whatever there is in the components of qualification. So with this in mind, let me now move on to another topic that is of interest, that will be interest to the RPL, because all the qualifications that we have, aside from going through the provider route where teaching and learning takes place, we have also now introduced the recognition of prior learning, which is something which is started out again in the tourism and hospitality management area. That is because there are many people who are experienced in these professions, and they needed qualifications. So that's why we started tourism and hospitality as a first area where we would be doing the RPL. So we had a initial model. It's a bit complicated, so I won't go into the detail. Let me say some of the revisions that we have done around this. So now we have a 4-step process in the RPL, and the 4 of them are pre-application, pre-screening, facilitation, and assessment. Right. So what we have added there is the pre-application. You know, RPL, as we have experienced it, is very difficult, especially for people who may have dropped out of school and have gone to work and don't have formal qualifications per se, which is what it's meant for. But you see, they have this difficulty when they come forward for application. So we put a step called pre-application, and it is where we offer guidance, or we literally handhold people to understand what this process is about before they actually come into the pre-screening where the application is formally put forward. And so this pre-application is something very, very important for us. Otherwise, if we don't do this correctly or properly, then we have found that there are lots of dropouts in this process. So this new part there has helped us greatly in accompanying our candidates for RPL into the pre-screening. And when it comes to facilitation, it's about this portfolio development, where designated facilitators are assigned to candidates to accompany them in the process of developing their portfolio. And this also has been quite a difficult area, because if it is not done properly, then we have witnessed quite a few people who drop out and cannot make it to the assessment. And of course, coming to the assessment itself, we have had very good examples of assessment that has been done in the tourism and hospitality area. In fact, many of the people who have come out of the RPL process in this sector in particular have been found to be very, very good in the work that they do eventually when going back to their own employment area. So these four process steps in this process now has been done to enable RPL to happen. And I must say that now we are, if we have started with RPL at sort of a middle level of the framework, at say level 3 of the National Qualifications Framework, 3 out of from the 10 levels, which is somewhere slightly at the middle. We have the next step we are doing now is we are moving to higher levels with regard to the RPL, because we have found to be quite useful to give opportunity to people who are, say, at the supervisory or middle management level, who have a lot of experience. Some people are very, very well experienced in the tourism area, for example. In the, you find some chefs or executive chefs, for that matter, who have reached such high level and very proficient, but do not have this formal qualification. And once they do have the qualification, they can move on to more managerial positions, of course, with further learning and so on. So this is a very good move that has taken place with regard to moving to higher levels of the NQF. So currently, we're at level 3. We have moved up to 4, 5, up to level 6, which is a diploma level of the NQF. This is one good thing that has happened. The next one is also funding support. Whereas before candidates had to pay for their own to be able to access the RPL process, now we have come up with a funding mechanism where this is completely free. In fact, in Mauritius, education is all free at all levels for all students. RPL was not. So we have now been able to secure funding that allows RPL candidates to access this scheme totally free. We also, by the way, have transport, which is free in this free education system in Mauritius. So this is around RPL. The next thing I want to talk about is the key milestones of the NQF, therefore, in this journey, like I said earlier, how we have moved very, very slowly, stepwise in different things. Right, in the first instance, in the development of qualifications, what was there before as National Trade Certificate, well, it's not just a change of name to National Certificate, it's the learning outcomes approach has been used significantly, in fact, totally in this area. So that was a major step in the beginning of the putting up of the framework with regard to the learning outcomes. Second is there is a whole quality assurance system that goes behind this the whole NQF. Whether you take development of qualifications, whether you take, for example, the delivery of training within the institutions, there is a new quality assurance system that we have put up with. And in fact, it gives responsibility to the institutions with regard to their own governance, with regard to how they conduct learning, assessment, learner feedback, and so on. It's all behind a quality assurance system, which then of which there is an audit that is done around. The other thing is which you just talked about is regarding the introduction of an RPL system. I just spoke about it. This is new, and in fact, we are having an enhanced system now with a new step that I just added, and also with the funding support. What is interesting also is the growing network that we have with MOUs with foreign countries. And in the course of the work, we have sort of met many colleagues from different countries, and we have sort of shared experiences, whether near home within the Indian Ocean, like Seychelles or Madagascar, or even further across in Africa, SADC, in the first instance in Africa. And we have also gone as far as in the Caribbean with one particular country, the Barbados, which we got to work together around what is called the transnational qualifications framework, which is one around for small island states within the Commonwealth. There was a TQF framework there, and for which we have also done some referencing. And the work we do with Barbados is in that context. So we are sharing experiences with other countries and learning also a lot on the way things are done to be able to put in practice in Mauritius. And also a big exercise was in our own region, the SADC, the exercise done with respect to the ACQF. And here this has been a very good, how shall I say, good journey for us to be able to do this exercise, because it has allowed us to do some rethinking ourselves in line with what were there as criteria that were required for alignment with the ACQF. Let me just very quickly go through all of them. See, so it looks at what are the responsibilities of the relevant national bodies that look at the NQF. There's also the link between the NQF levels and the descriptors at SADC-QF. Then how far the NQF is based on learning outcomes and the credit systems. Transparency of procedures, including on the NQF. All these are criteria. The QA system, the agreement of the relevant QA bodies within the country, and the competent national bodies that certify alignment with the NQF with the SADC. This is an important one because it's very important also that all the bodies that are concerned do certify, and it goes very high level in the country, even up to the top level of government at the level of cabinet. So what the methodology, I won't go through in detail with that, but basically it's about having a committee at the national level. You do a self-assessment exercise and produce a report based on evidence. And then of course, there's a submission of this report and the approval process that takes place at the level of SADC. And lastly, therefore, it's published on the official platform. What this gives us in terms of outcome is that I just mentioned official platform where it's published. And secondly, eventually, then we will use in all our award documentation, the relevant SADC level, which we will mention in this document, our documentation. So in a way, this is also quite similar, probably quite similar to what type of work that we will probably be called upon to do for the African region, for all of Africa. And this allows us, therefore, for all the mobility that will take place between the people who go for work or for further learning within here for SADC within the region in the community. So I have come to I just wanted to add a little bit very quickly regarding the COVID situation. Of course, like in many countries which was very badly affected, fortunately Mauritius, we are now COVID safe. We haven't had any for the past 3-4 months now, although our borders remain closed for the time being. Anybody coming in has to go to quarantine and so on. The thing is, the COVID situation has also forced us now to look at the way we do things in terms of going online, going for assessment online, and it will affect in many ways. Something we will have to talk about in greater detail, but it will be part of the NQF as well. So this brings me therefore to the end of the presentation. In case there are any questions, then we'll be able to take them. Thank you.